Are you looking for a special gift for your loved ones? Let's use your wood turning talent and skills to make unique custom gifts for your family and friends. Custom pins are a wonderful gift that they can use every day. So let's get started. Welcome to Turning Stitches, I'm Sean. We help woodturners learn the craft to begin making fun projects faster. I am terrible at giving gifts. Normally, I wait until the last minute, then end up picking something up that is pretty forgettable. Hopefully you're not like me, but if you are, this video series may help you out. Let's take your wood turning skills and talent to create handmade personal gifts that your family and friends can cherish for years to come. Let's start this series with pin turning. We can get extremely creative with pins since there are a lot of pin kits available, including specialty kits for different occupations, hobbies, sports, etc. There is a variety of materials we can use, including wood, acrylics, and other materials, so colors and textures seem endless too. This flexibility gives us the ability to customize pins for the person we're giving them to. And of course, if you're an enterprising woodturner, any project that makes a good gift will be a good seller. There are a lot of steps to cover here, so let's get started. We are including links in the description for pin kits, tools, and supplies that we're using today so you can quickly find these items for your research. Many of the links are affiliate links, which will not cost you more, but if you make a purchase, we will earn a small commission. Today we're going to be working on a pin similar to this one, which is a European pin kit or a designer twist pin kit. It goes by a couple different names. I've already cut down some scrap wood. I have a maple scrap and a walnut scrap that we're going to use today, and I've already got them cut down to the rough lengths of my pin tubes. Now in this kit, we have a longer pin tube that goes down here at the bottom. This will be the tip of the pin, and then up here at the top, this will be the top edge of the pin. And I've cut these scraps down so that they're just a little bit longer than my tubes, and we'll trim those off here in another step. So let's start drilling and get going. Our first process is to drill a hole all the way through our pin blank. I've got my scroll chuck here with pin jaws in it, which will hold my square turning blank very securely so we can drill this out. I have a 7mm drill bit here that matches the diameter of our pin tubes. So let's go ahead and get this hole drilled. So all we're doing here is just drilling all the way through our pin blank. We're going to do this on both pin blanks. With the holes drilled in our blanks, all we need to do now is glue the tubes into the blanks. We're just going to use a little bit of CA glue to do that. We're using quite a bit of CA glue in this process today. I like to scuff up the brass tubes just a little bit to kind of give the glue a little something to bite onto. This little insertion tool makes it just a little bit easier, a little less messy. There's quite a bit of mess here in this process with the glue. I'll also be using accelerator in a lot of these steps, which will just help things dry a little quicker. But the tube's glued into our pin blank, and now that the glue's dry, we're going to use a barrel trimmer to flush off this face and trim down to the top of that pin tube. We'll do that on each end of our pin blank, so 4 times in total. With our pin blanks ready, with our tubes glued in and the faces flush, it's time to assemble everything onto our pin mandrel, which is what we're going to use to hold everything on the lathe. Now I like to use the bushing kits that correspond to the pin kit that I'm using. It just makes it a lot easier to size the parts as we're turning. So in this case, I'm going to start on the very end. I'm going to put the tip of the pin down here toward the headstock. So I'm going to start with the bushing that's the same size as the tip. In this case, we're using the walnut portion. Is going to be down here to the tip. I've got a bushing for the center, for the middle. I'm going to put it on next. Then our maple piece goes on. And then for the cap. Now once we have this kind of assembled, I'm going to go ahead and tighten
this end where we've got our Morse taper end. So I've got a couple wrenches here that correspond to the whole thing. I'm just going to tighten this down. Once that's tight, then I've got a washer that goes on this end, and then just kind of knurled nut. And once we apply pressure with this knurled nut, and that'll kind of hold all these pieces together. And we just get that stuck in our headstock. We'll bring up our tailstock. I don't want a lot of pressure on the tailstock. I just want to kind of hold this end. So we're not going to drive pressure like you would a lot of times turning between centers. But now we're ready. Now we're ready to start turning. So I've got my lathe speed up at about 1500 RPMs. And I'm just going to start with a spindle roughing gouge, as I often would. And we're just going to work down the corners and get everything round. And then we'll start working on our shape for our pin. With both segments of our pin round, I've got my detailed spindle gouge. We're going to use it to kind of work down to our bushings and start getting our final sizes at each of these critical points on our pin. So you can add shape to your pin however you want to shape it. You can cut in other details and things as we're getting close to these kind of critical diameters. So we'll kind of get this one wrapped up and we'll be on to our next step. So here I'm just using a negative rake scraper to kind of smooth out some of my tool marks. So on this pin, we've got a decorative band right here in the middle. I've removed part of the bushing here in the center. In order to get that decorative band onto this part of the pin, I need to reduce this diameter down here to this bushing, and then the decorative band will just slide right over and we'll glue that in place. So I've got my parting tool out, and we'll just kind of reduce this down about the width of the parting tool right here, down to that bushing where that decorative sleeve will go on. If you're getting value out of the video so far, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe so you can come back and review this video later if you need to. So now the finishing process starts. And for this project, it really starts with sanding. I'm going to start with 100 grit and work up through the grits to probably 400 to 600. The maple portion of my pin is not as smooth as I'd like, so I'm going to start at 100 grit, and we're just going to progress up through the grits until we get up to about 600, 800. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on this, I just kind of want to smooth it off. I've got the speed slowed down a little on the lathe right now to about 325 RPMs. This is where I generally like to do most of my sanding at the lathe, is at about this speed. Here in a few minutes we'll kick it up as we start polishing. I want to make sure on each of the grits that I come back and sand by hand just briefly with the grain. That'll help remove some of the radial marks, especially on a pin like this where we're going for a high gloss finish. We don't want to leave those radial lines way down underneath the finish. It'll show up for sure. So this is 1000 grit, and right before I hit this, I went ahead and wiped this down with some denatured alcohol just to kind of help get all the stuff out of the grain. Kind of smooth it back off with 1000 grit. Today we're going to be finishing our pins with CA glue. This is a thin CA glue. And this is my favorite pin finish. It's fast, it's durable. You can bring it up to a nice glossy shine. We're going to start out with thin CA. We're going to apply it with just a paper towel. It's relatively slow. I don't want it slinging off of here, but I just want to apply it just a little bit, kind of rub it in with the rag. I want to be careful with my rag because it's going to start drying pretty quick. So I just want to kind of wipe it on there. And then we're going to hit it with accelerator, which will dry that very quickly. This will allow us to build up coats pretty quick. I like to start out this way with 3 to 5 coats, kind of depending on how things are kind of working along. You do want to make sure you rotate the paper towel so that you don't end up with dried glue kind of scratching the surface. Once I've got a few coats of glue on, 3 to 5 normally, I like to let it dry for a couple minutes even though I'm using the accelerator, and then it's just time to start polishing. So the 2 methods that I use to polish the CA finish like this is either like a micro mesh pad like this one, which is what we're going to use today, or sometimes I'll use these Abralon pads, which are just super fine abrasive pads that are great for polishing. Use the Abralon pad, or the micro mesh pad, sorry. I do use these wet, so I'll kind of spray some water on here and we'll use it. The one thing that is important, so this pad has a little bit of rigidity to it, so I really just want to rub the pin body. I really don't want to apply much pressure as we're doing it, and that'll help keep from scratching our surface. I also am going to have the lathe. The lathe is running about 2,000 RPM, so much faster than I normally turn with. I'm just going to add a little water. And I'm really not applying much pressure at all. And we just want to polish the surface on both the top and bottom. That's all we're looking for here. Got a clean paper towel that I'm going to use here just to kind of wipe off the slurry between each coat. I started out with green, so I'm going to flip over to this kind of orange or teal or salmon color, kind of do the same thing, and all we're going to do is just keep working through our grids. Well, I'm pretty happy with the way this one turned out. If you're not happy, if you've got a flaw in here, you can sand it back down a little bit, add some more CA glue, and then just kind of come back through the grids polishing. My last step polishing is just this little CA polish cream that I'm going to use here with a fresh paper towel. Kick the lathe back on, just kind of rub that in. It does kind of make a mess, so then we're going to wipe it right back off in a clean section of the towel. As I'm pulling this off the mandrel, I like to score this joint right here where my pin blank is and the bushing. Usually you get glue, you kind of end up gluing the bushing and everything together there a little bit. I just like to cut that, and that helps prevent cracking with our pin parts all polished, ready to go. The last thing to do is to assemble everything. Now I like to use my lathe for the final assembly, and I've just got this little block that I keep here in the shop that's drilled out on one end for the tip and on the other end for the cap. So I just put this back in my pin jaws, and I kind of use the lathe as a press to get everything put together. I'm just going to hold the tip in there, and then I've got kind of get my tube aligned. Just going to bring the tailstock up, lock it. So I'm using this kind of blunt tip here on my live center. It's not a super sharp one, and that just keeps me from flaring out the inside of those pin tubes. And all I have to do is just gradually rotate that in until it locks it in place, just like that. So the next step is to put our cartridge in. So up here at the top is where it screws in, and kind of in the middle of the pin. I'm going to get the tip right back in there. I'm just going to align this here. Same thing. With my more blunt live center here, I can just kind of press this in, very gradually. I want to be patient. So just keep pressing that in until it's in the right place. Now the one thing I will do quite frequently in this process is I'm going to take my refill and I'm going to plug it in here, screw it in, and see how we're doing. So I'm not even, we're not even in far enough for the tip of the pen to show. So we're just going to keep pressing the pen until it's in at the right depth. I flipped my block around, so now I've got the cap that we're going to press on here now. So we're just going to, just like we did at the tip, we're going to kind of hold this in place, bring up the tailstock, and just very gently get everything pressed together. Our last step before we assemble the pen is to put the decorative band here in the middle. So I'm just going to put CA glue, a little bit of glue here. On this part, I'm not going to use accelerator. Polish and stuff on there, it'll kind of doesn't act well or react well to the accelerator. So we're just going to let that dry, and then we'll be ready to assemble the pen. Now just put the parts together, and you've created a really unique custom gift for your loved one. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you'll know when next week's gift idea comes out.